The greatest risk is not taking one. Napoleon Bonaparte. Most people believe that great success comes from taking huge risks. They see the gambler who hits the jackpot or the entrepreneur who bets everything on a single idea, and they think that's the path to fortune. This is a dangerous illusion. True success isn't about reckless abandon, it's about calculated risk. It's about understanding the odds, minimizing the potential downside, and maximizing your potential gain. Those who blindly chase high-risk, high-reward scenarios are far more likely to crash and burn than to achieve lasting prosperity. They mistake luck for skill, and they fail to appreciate the subtle art of managing uncertainty. The difference between a calculated risk and a reckless gamble lies in the preparation and analysis. Before taking any significant step, the strategic thinker meticulously assesses the situation. They gather information, identify potential pitfalls, and develop contingency plans. They don't simply hope for the best, they actively work to shape the outcome. They understand that risk is inherent in any endeavor, but it can be managed and mitigated through careful planning and execution. They see risk not as a barrier, but as a puzzle to be solved, a challenge to be overcome. Consider the chess master. Every move they make is a risk. They are sacrificing pieces, opening lines of attack, and exposing their king. But these risks are not arbitrary. They are carefully calculated, based on a deep understanding of the game and their opponent. The master anticipates the consequences of each move, weighing the potential benefits against the potential drawbacks. They are willing to take risks, but only when they believe the odds are in their favor. This is the essence of calculated risk, making informed decisions that increase your chances of success, even in the face of uncertainty. On the other hand, the impulsive player acts on instinct and emotion. They see an opportunity and jump at it without considering the consequences. They are driven by greed, fear, or a desire for quick gratification. They fail to assess the risks involved, and they are often blindsided by unexpected setbacks. Their actions are erratic and unpredictable, making them vulnerable to exploitation. They may occasionally stumble upon a lucky break, but their success is fleeting and unsustainable. Ultimately, their recklessness leads to ruin. The concept of calculated risk extends far beyond the realm of games and business. It applies to every aspect of life, from personal relationships to career choices. The wise individual approaches all decisions with a strategic mindset, carefully weighing the pros and cons and seeking to minimize potential harm. They understand that there are no guarantees in life, but by taking calculated risks, they can significantly increase their chances of achieving their goals. They don't shy away from challenges. They embrace them with intelligence and foresight. So abandon the myth of the high-stakes gambler and embrace the discipline of the strategic thinker. Learn to analyze risk, manage uncertainty, and make informed decisions. The path to lasting success is not paved with reckless gambles. It is built on a foundation of calculated risks, carefully considered and skillfully executed. It's a game of probabilities, not pure chance. It requires patience, discipline, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes, but the rewards are well worth the effort. The difference between a calculated risk and a reckless gamble lies not just in the potential reward, but in the depth of preparation and the understanding of the underlying system. It's a matter of perspective. To the untrained eye, a master chess player making a daring sacrifice might appear reckless, throwing away valuable pieces for no apparent gain. But in reality, the master has foreseen several moves ahead, calculated the potential consequences, and determined that the sacrifice will ultimately lead to a decisive advantage. This is the essence of calculated risk, acting with boldness, but with foresight. It requires the ability to detach oneself from emotional impulses and to see the situation objectively, as a set of interconnected variables that can be manipulated to your benefit. This objectivity is paramount. Emotion clouds judgment, leading to impulsive decisions driven by fear or greed, rather than rational analysis. The strategic thinker understands this and actively cultivates a mindset of detachment, allowing them to assess risk with clarity and precision. Furthermore, calculated risk involves not just understanding the potential downsides, but also actively working to mitigate them. It's not enough to simply acknowledge that something could go wrong. You must develop contingency plans to address potential setbacks. This requires anticipating different scenarios and preparing for them in advance. Imagine a general planning a military campaign. They wouldn't simply march their troops into enemy territory without first considering potential ambushes, supply line disruptions, or changes in weather conditions. They would develop multiple plans of action, each tailored to a specific set of circumstances. This same principle applies to all areas of life. A calculated risk-taker doesn't just hope for the best, they prepare for the worst, and in doing so, significantly increase their chances of success. This preparation is not merely about having backup plans. It's about building resilience into your system, making it robust enough to withstand unexpected shocks. The psychology of calculated risk also involves understanding your own biases and limitations. We are all subject to cognitive biases that can distort our perception of reality and lead us to make poor decisions. For example, the confirmation bias leads us to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs, while ignoring evidence that contradicts them. The availability heuristic causes us to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled, such as those that are recent or emotionally charged. These biases can lead us to underestimate the risks involved in a particular course of action, or to overestimate our ability to control the outcome. To overcome these biases, we must be willing to challenge our own assumptions and to seek out diverse perspectives. We must also be aware of our own emotional state and how it might be influencing our judgment. A strategic thinker is constantly self-reflecting, aware that the biggest threat to any strategy can often be their own faulty thinking. Ultimately, the ability to take calculated risks is not an innate talent, but a skill that can be learned and developed through practice and experience. It requires a willingness to learn from your mistakes, to adapt to changing circumstances, and to constantly refine your strategies. It's a continuous process of learning, adapting, and evolving. Each calculated risk, whether it succeeds or fails, provides valuable lessons that can be applied to future decisions. The key is to approach each situation with a mindset of curiosity and a desire to understand the underlying dynamics at play. The more you understand the system, the better you will be able to assess risk and make informed decisions. And the more informed your decisions, the greater your chances of achieving lasting success. True success is not about avoiding risk, it's about mastering it. Consider the story of Amazon's relentless pursuit of market dominance. Many criticized Jeff Bezos for years as he reinvested profits back into the company, neglecting short-term gains in favor of long-term infrastructure and market share. Wall Street analysts, focused on quarterly earnings, often questioned his strategy, labeling it as reckless and unsustainable. They wanted to see immediate returns, higher dividends, and a focus on traditional profitability metrics. But Bezos was playing a different game. He was building a logistical empire, a vast network of warehouses, transportation systems, and data centers designed to deliver anything, anywhere, at unprecedented speed and efficiency. This required massive upfront investment, and it meant sacrificing short-term profits to secure long-term dominance. Bezos understood that in the rapidly evolving world of e-commerce, scale was everything. The company that could deliver the best customer experience at the lowest cost would ultimately win. He calculated that by investing heavily in infrastructure and technology, Amazon could create a virtuous cycle, attracting more customers, generating more data, and further improving its efficiency and cost structure. He was betting that short-term pain would lead to long-term gain, and he was willing to weather the criticism and skepticism to see his vision through. It wasn't simply blind faith. It was a calculated risk based on a deep understanding of the market dynamics and the competitive landscape. He analyzed consumer behavior, studied the trends in technology, and assessed the capabilities of his competitors. He knew that the risks were significant, but he also believed that the potential rewards were even greater. Many saw the investments as overly ambitious and even foolish. They didn't appreciate the long game Bezos was playing. They saw the losses on the balance sheet but failed to grasp the strategic value of the investments. They underestimated the power of network effects and the importance of customer loyalty. But Bezos remained steadfast, driven by his belief in the power of innovation and his commitment to building a customer-centric organization. He was willing to make bold bets, to experiment with new ideas, and to learn from his failures. He understood that risk-taking was essential for growth, and that the greatest risk of all was to stand still. The narrative was not one of reckless abandon, but of strategic patience. He was willing to wait, to invest, and to iterate until he achieved his desired outcome. His vision of Amazon as the everything store was not realized overnight, but through years of calculated risks and relentless execution. The critics were eventually silenced, and Amazon emerged as one of the most valuable companies in the world. This case perfectly demonstrates the difference between a calculated risk and a gamble. A gamble relies on luck and chance, while a calculated risk is based on analysis, foresight, and a clear understanding of the potential consequences. Bezos assessed the risks and rewards, weighed his options, and made a calculated decision to invest heavily in the future. It was a risky move, but it was not a gamble. He was not simply hoping for the best. He was actively shaping the outcome through his strategic decisions and his unwavering commitment to his vision. The lesson to take away from this is that calculated risk-taking is not about eliminating risk altogether. It's about managing it effectively and using it to your advantage. It's about understanding the potential downsides, mitigating the risks, and maximizing the potential rewards. It's about having a clear vision, a well-defined strategy, and the courage to pursue it relentlessly, even in the face of adversity. It's about playing the long game and focusing on building a sustainable advantage, rather than chasing short-term gains. The trap that many fall into is mistaking activity for progress. They equate busyness with productivity, filling their days with tasks that provide the illusion of forward movement, but ultimately lead nowhere. This constant state of motion creates a false sense of accomplishment, blinding them to the fact that they are simply running in place. They are so caught up in the day-to-day grind that they fail to step back and assess whether their actions are truly aligned with their goals. This is the allure of the urgent, the constant barrage of demands and distractions that pull them away from what truly matters. The urgent becomes the enemy of the important, and they find themselves perpetually putting out fires instead of building a solid foundation. This reactive approach to life leaves them feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and ultimately unfulfilled. They become slaves to their circumstances, constantly reacting to external pressures instead of proactively shaping their own destinies. They mistake motion for direction, expending enormous amounts of energy without ever reaching their desired destination. They are like sailors lost at sea, frantically adjusting their sails without ever consulting a map or compass. They may be working hard, but their efforts are ultimately wasted because they lack a clear sense of purpose and direction. This is the tragedy of the unfocused, the squandering of potential and the failure to achieve meaningful results. Another common mistake is focusing on the short term at the expense of the long term. Many are driven by immediate gratification, seeking instant results and quick wins. They lack the patience and discipline to invest in the future, preferring instead to reap immediate rewards. This short-sighted approach often leads to unsustainable outcomes and ultimately undermines their long-term success. They may achieve temporary gains, but these are often followed by setbacks and failures. They are like farmers who harvest their crops before they are ripe, sacrificing long-term yield for short-term gain. They fail to understand the power of compounding, the ability of small, consistent actions to produce significant results over time. They underestimate the importance of planting seeds and nurturing them, preferring instead to pluck the low-hanging fruit. This lack of foresight often leads to missed opportunities and ultimately limits their potential. They become trapped in a cycle of chasing short-term gains, never building a sustainable advantage or achieving lasting success. They prioritize immediate gratification over long-term fulfillment, sacrificing their future for fleeting pleasures. This is the folly of the impatient, the failure to recognize the power of time and the importance of strategic patience. Furthermore, many individuals are paralyzed by fear of failure. They allow their anxieties and insecurities to dictate their actions, preventing them from taking calculated risks and pursuing their goals. They overestimate the potential downsides and underestimate their own ability to cope with adversity. This fear-based mindset often leads to inaction and missed opportunities. They become so focused on avoiding failure that they fail to pursue success. They are like athletes who are so afraid of losing that they never take the field. They may avoid the pain of defeat, but they also forfeit the chance to win. This risk-averse approach often stems from a lack of self-confidence and a fear of judgment. They worry about what others will think if they fail, allowing external opinions to dictate their decisions. They fail to recognize that failure is an inevitable part of the learning process, and that setbacks can often lead to valuable insights and growth. This fear of failure ultimately limits their potential and prevents them from achieving their full potential. They become trapped in a comfort zone, never venturing outside their boundaries or pushing themselves to new heights. This is the paralysis of fear, the inability to act due to anxiety and insecurity. Still, another pitfall is the tendency to rely solely on intuition and gut feeling, without conducting thorough analysis and research. While intuition can be a valuable asset, it should not be the sole basis for making important decisions. Many people overestimate their own judgment and fail to seek out objective data and expert opinions. This can lead to costly mistakes and missed opportunities. They become blinded by their own biases and fail to consider alternative perspectives. They are like doctors who diagnose patients without conducting proper examinations, relying solely on their hunches and assumptions. This lack of due diligence often leads to inaccurate assessments and poor outcomes. They fail to recognize the importance of evidence-based decision-making and the value of seeking out diverse viewpoints. This over-reliance on intuition can stem from arrogance or a lack of intellectual curiosity. They may believe that they already know everything they need to know, or they may simply be too lazy to conduct proper research. This ultimately limits their understanding of the situation and increases the likelihood of making mistakes. This is the danger of intuition without analysis, the reliance on gut feeling without the support of data and research. The Machiavellian approach embraces calculated risk as a fundamental tool for achieving power and influence. It recognizes that all actions carry some degree of risk, but it differentiates between reckless gambles and strategically planned ventures. A calculated risk is not a blind leap of faith. It is a deliberate decision made after carefully weighing the potential benefits against the potential costs. It involves assessing the probabilities of success and failure, identifying potential obstacles, and developing contingency plans to mitigate any negative consequences. The Machiavellian strategist understands that avoiding risk altogether is often the greatest risk of all, as it can lead to stagnation and missed opportunities. They are willing to venture beyond their comfort zone, but they do so with a clear understanding of the potential dangers and a well-defined strategy for navigating them. This is the essence of strategic maneuvering, the ability to anticipate challenges, adapt to changing circumstances, and seize opportunities with precision and decisiveness. The successful execution of calculated risk requires a deep understanding of human nature and the motivations of others. The Machiavellian strategist must be able to accurately assess the strengths and weaknesses of their adversaries, anticipate their reactions, and manipulate their emotions to gain an advantage. This involves understanding the principles of psychology and persuasion, as well as the art of deception and manipulation. However, it is important to distinguish between ethical and unethical uses of these skills. While the Machiavellian approach is often associated with ruthlessness and manipulation, it can also be used for positive purposes, such as negotiating compromises, building consensus, and motivating people towards a common goal. The key is to use these skills with discretion and restraint, and to avoid causing unnecessary harm or suffering. The effective Machiavellian understands that long-term success depends on building trust and maintaining a reputation for integrity, even while engaging in strategic maneuvering. One of the key elements of calculated risk is the ability to learn from mistakes. The Machiavellian strategist understands that setbacks are inevitable, but they view them as opportunities for growth and improvement. They analyze their failures to identify the root causes, learn from their errors, and adjust their strategies accordingly. They do not dwell on their past mistakes or allow them to discourage them. Instead, they use them as stepping stones towards future success. This requires a willingness to be self-critical and to accept feedback from others. The Machiavellian strategist also understands the importance of maintaining a flexible mindset and being willing to adapt to changing circumstances. They recognize that the world is constantly evolving, and they must be able to adjust their strategies and tactics accordingly. This adaptability is crucial for navigating uncertainty and maintaining a competitive edge. They are not rigid in their thinking. They are always open to new ideas and approaches. The effective implementation of calculated risk also necessitates meticulous planning and preparation. The Machiavellian strategist does not simply jump into action without carefully considering all the relevant factors. They conduct thorough research, gather data, and analyze the situation from multiple perspectives. They develop detailed plans that outline specific objectives, strategies, and tactics. They also identify potential risks and develop contingency plans to mitigate them. This meticulous planning allows them to anticipate potential challenges and respond effectively. The Machiavellian strategist also understands the importance of communication and collaboration. They work closely with their team to ensure that everyone is on the same page and that all resources are properly allocated. They also communicate effectively with stakeholders to build support for their initiatives. This collaborative approach is essential for achieving complex objectives and maximizing the chances of success. In essence, calculated risk is not about being reckless or irresponsible. It is about being strategic and proactive. It is about understanding the potential rewards and risks associated with different actions and making informed decisions based on careful analysis and planning. It is about being willing to venture beyond one's comfort zone, but doing so with a clear understanding of the potential dangers and a well-defined strategy for navigating them. The Machiavellian approach recognizes that risk is an inherent part of life and that avoiding it altogether is often the greatest risk of all. By embracing calculated risk, individuals can unlock their full potential and achieve extraordinary success. Calculated risk, viewed through the lens of strategic thinking, transcends simple cost-benefit analysis. It delves into the very core of human motivation and the dynamics of power. It's not merely about weighing the odds. It's about understanding the psychology of your opponents and the subtle shifts in the environment that can tip the balance in your favor. The master strategist recognizes that fear is a powerful weapon, both when wielded against others and when overcome within oneself. Those paralyzed by fear of failure are destined to be followers, forever bound by the limitations of their own anxieties. True leaders, on the other hand, embrace the discomfort of uncertainty, recognizing that it is in the realm of the unknown that the greatest opportunities lie. They cultivate a mindset of resilience, viewing setbacks not as defeats, but as valuable learning experiences. Each misstep, each calculated risk that doesn't pan out, provides crucial data for refining their strategies and strengthening their resolve. They understand that the path to success is rarely linear, and that the ability to adapt and persevere in the face of adversity is paramount. Furthermore, the effective strategist comprehends the significance of asymmetry in risk-taking. It's not always about taking the biggest risks. It's about taking the right risks at the right time. Sometimes, the most calculated move is to do nothing, to observe and wait for the opportune moment to strike. Other times, it's about taking a small, seemingly insignificant risk that can yield disproportionate rewards. The key is to understand the context, to assess the vulnerabilities of your opponents, and to exploit those vulnerabilities with precision and ruthlessness. This requires a keen awareness of one's own strengths and weaknesses, as well as a willingness to delegate tasks and leverage the expertise of others. The Machiavellian strategist understands that they cannot do everything themselves, and that building a strong, loyal team is essential for achieving long-term success. They cultivate a culture of trust and collaboration, empowering their team members to take calculated risks and rewarding them for their successes. The ability to think several steps ahead is another hallmark of the calculated risk-taker. They don't just focus on the immediate consequences of their actions. They anticipate the ripple effects and the potential countermoves of their opponents. They play a mental game of chess, constantly analyzing the board and adjusting their strategies accordingly. This requires a deep understanding of game theory and the principles of strategic interaction. They understand that every decision has consequences, and that those consequences can reverberate far beyond the immediate situation. They are masters of deception and misdirection, using feints and bluffs to confuse their opponents and gain a strategic advantage. They also understand the importance of maintaining secrecy, keeping their plans hidden from prying eyes and revealing them only when the time is right. Information is power, and the strategist hoards it carefully, using it to manipulate events and control the narrative. Beyond the tactical considerations, the Machiavellian approach to calculated risk also involves a deep understanding of human nature. People are not always rational actors. They are driven by emotions, biases, and personal agendas. The strategist understands these psychological vulnerabilities and exploits them to their advantage. They are masters of persuasion and manipulation, using rhetoric and emotional appeals to influence the decisions of others. They also understand the power of charisma and the ability to inspire others to follow their lead. They cultivate a strong personal brand, projecting an image of confidence, competence, and authority. This allows them to command respect and influence, making it easier to achieve their objectives. But beneath the surface of charm and charisma lies a cold, calculating intellect, constantly analyzing and assessing the situation. They are always one step ahead, anticipating the moves of their opponents and preparing their own countermoves. Ultimately, the doctrine of calculated risk is a philosophy of action. It is about taking control of one's destiny and shaping the world according to one's own vision. It is about refusing to be a passive observer and instead becoming an active participant in the game of life. It is about embracing the challenges and opportunities that come one's way and using them to achieve one's goals. But it is not about recklessness or impulsivity. It is about careful planning, strategic thinking, and calculated execution. It is about understanding the potential rewards and risks associated with different actions and making informed decisions based on a thorough analysis of the situation. It is about being willing to venture beyond one's comfort zone, but doing so with a clear understanding of the potential dangers and a well-defined strategy for navigating them. It is about cultivating a mindset of resilience, viewing setbacks not as defeats but as valuable learning experiences. And above all, it is about having the courage to act, to take the necessary risks,